Hey guys, welcome to tonight's Cover One Buffalo show. We are going to be diving into all the different injury news. We have our man Banged Up Bills, Kyle Trimble, on with us tonight. But first, our dudes over at Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia Worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host Greg Tompsett along with I'm partner in crimeless. Aaron is somewhere in the wilderness of Maine. I hope he didn't get attacked by bears or beavers or whatever attacks you in Maine. I don't really know what things attack you in Maine, but hopefully he wasn't attacked by anything dangerous. Aaron may or may not join us tonight. We'll have to see. I'm not sure where it goes. I wore this shirt just special for my man Thomas. Got some new gear we're going to be trying out here as the season goes. We're excited about a couple of these things. But tonight's show, we are going to be diving into the injury bug that has hit the Buffalo Bills. We're going to go through every single player that you've heard on the injury report. And, there's no one that can give us a better update than our man, Doctor of Physical Therapy, Kyle Trimble, the founder of Banged Up Bills. Kyle, how are we doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, Greg. Thanks for having me on tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always good to I take that back. It's never good to talk to you. It's always it's never it's always anxiety filled. And I'm like, I don't want to talk to Kyle. Like, he's going to tell me scary things, but it's lovely to talk to you. You're a lovely person. It's just the scary things that you tell me that always make me anxious. But as we kind of dive in here, you and I got a chance to hang out at the Cover One meetup and get to go to camp and everything like that. How is it getting back into football?
It's great. It's fun getting back into that routine. I mean, the guys that go to training camp, the players, the fans, we all have that routine, our game day routine, if you will. So my game day routine for the injury stuff is looking at the injury reports, looking at the daily updates from all the beat reporters, and just seeing what's going on around there, and just try to put together all the information and try to put together timelines and identify what injuries are worth diving into, which ones aren't. So it's good to get back in that routine, because that means football is near, and Bills game days are always fun to gear up and get ready to go.
Yeah, I can't wait. Heck, tomorrow night at this time, there will be football on the television. It might not be being played by anyone who's going to be in the NFL this year, but there is going to be football on our televisions tomorrow night, and I can't wait for one to see that. So without further ado, let's get into the nuts and bolts of what we have going on here. So what you guys can expect for tonight's show, we basically have all the different players listed out. So if you are just jumping in and we haven't gotten to a player yet, don't worry. We're going to get to all of them. And if you jump on midway through, tough luck. You got to go back and rewatch it. We'll get to those guys later. So we're going to go through each of the players, and I'm just going to kind of shoot them at you rapid fire. Some of these maybe you'll expand into a little bit more discussion where we'll talk about, what should we expect? What could it mean? What's the potential of recurrence? Things like that. Some of them hopefully are pretty quick, and you could just tell us, hey, don't worry, I think this is going to be in good shape. But let's start with the one that I expect to be, the biggest question going into the season. It was, Tre White last year on Thanksgiving. We see him non-contact injury, tear his ACL. You did a ton of really good coverage of it at that time. For guys like you, I'm sure you've been eating up this video footage that we've been getting over the last couple of days here. Talk us through what you were maybe coming into camp, and then maybe what those videos and what some of the recent information has helped with where your mindset at of where he is in his progression.
So just to recap, he tore on Thanksgiving. He had surgery about 3 weeks later in mid-December, the 15th or 16th, I believe it was 16th. So we know our rehab timelines for ACL for most players are 9 to 12 months, give or take the length based on the level of damage in there. So if you have more ligament damage in there, such as just ACL, or if you had the MCL, LCL, PCL, the other stuff like that, that lengthens the rehab time or complicates it at least. So we know that Tre'Davious White had just the ACL with a little meniscus damage, but didn't sound like it was anything crazy. They did delay the surgery because they wanted to rehab the knee a little bit. They wanted to get some of the swelling down, and they find that when they do that, they have better outcomes. They're not trying to go in there with an angry knee, fix everything up, and then try to crank on and get it moving again there. So
before you continue here, that's an interesting one. I would have assumed, I always in my mind had envisioned any delay in surgery is just automatically negative, that, oh, it's real bad or something. So that's actually strategic that sometimes they wait to do that.
And sometimes they'll do that too for the meniscus, or not the meniscus, the MCL too. So like sometimes the MCL, it's multi-layered. It usually doesn't require surgery, but sometimes that thing needs just to heal and provide medial stability for the knee, so that it can, when you start getting up and moving again, it's not gonna feel like your knee's gonna buckle. So sometimes they do that stuff just like to say, hey, as long as this heals up naturally, that's less stuff we have to monkey around with in there, and we can focus on things that need surgical repair.
Okay.
So
now how about into what we've seen, where your expectations were there, pretty, bland information. Hey, everybody's on schedule. He's on pace. They've given us all the cliche answers. We don't know what the schedule is. We don't know what that pace is. What have you seen now with these videos of what in layman's view has been some pretty intense workouts as he's ramping up?
So he's been jumping, he's been running, he's been landing on his left leg. We saw yesterday. He's been hopping. He's just doing everything he can to help, not justify, but show that he has good control of the knee. And when he's going through some of the stuff there, you could see where there's maybe minor deviations. So sometimes early on with the jumping, you could see where maybe he stutter steps or missteps a little bit. And it's not saying that his knee isn't getting there, but you could just tell that those were the little minute details where you had to still watch, because you don't want that knee to be shifting medial-laterally. You don't want that having to kind of land and then reestablish your base of support. You want to make sure you can land and have a stable knee that you can absorb the contact through there. When he's sprinting, we were seeing that he wasn't able to decelerate as well as normally we could. So like if he tried stopping on a dime, he would have a tough time doing that, because his quadriceps just isn't able to stop and slow him down efficiently. He had to rely more on his right side to kind of slow him down. And so you can see a uneven stepping, like one step is bigger than the other, and you just kind of slow yourself down there. So to the normal speed and to the untrained eye, it's like, okay, it looks pretty good. But then if you start slowing it down, you see the gait cycle and how it's moving there. You can start seeing the little changes there. And then just some of the general range of motion stuff we're looking for to make sure the knee's moving through the full range of motion. Some of the video angles we got aren't always the best, so it's hard to say for certain whether the knee is doing what it's doing or whether it's not. But we're going off of just what is available to us, and everything's looking good, though we know it's not expected to be perfect at this point in time. He's just a little less than 9 months out from surgery there, because if you go by the weeks that they did from surgery. So it takes a while for them to get back to fully feeling normal. We know that from Trent Murphy, Harrison Phillips, tons of other players, but we know that he's on his way toward getting better. So going to the second part of your question, my expectation was week 1 was going to be a tight timeline. Now that's if everything was going perfect here. So as we're looking, I don't want to say it's perfect right now because I don't know where he's at, but we continue getting positive encouragements. They've stated that he is not having setbacks, that he wants to be out there. He's doing everything he can. Micah Hyde talked about how he's working in the dark or something like that. So he's doing everything he can. I did an article for Buffalo Rumblings. I thought he would come back in week 2, because if you look at the weeks that were coming out, he had the surgery back in December. If you do 36 weeks, that puts you on August 25th. So then 3 weeks later if you do it 2 weeks later is a week 1 game. So that's a tight timeline. And then if you add in where you're at the Thursday, and then week 2 is that Monday September night. 19th. Yes. So you have 11 extra days. That's a substantial amount of time. That's almost 2 weeks to work on that. So I thought he would come back and limit his snaps with that. But once again, we're anticipating that he doesn't hit PUP for the first 4 games. We're anticipating that everything's going good with the return to sport testing, and that he wants to be out there and feels good playing. So those are variables I can't see out there, but from what I'm seeing and what he wants to do, and just knowing how the team is, I'm confident that he can come back week 2, but I could be dead wrong too. I mean, no one's perfect with this stuff.
But you would say, as of right now, everything that we've seen, the range is more that week 1 to week 4 versus, I know there were points where people said, hey, you never know, everything's different. Some of them could push into late October, November.
Mm-hmm.
We could be looking, after the bye coming into week 8 against the Packers. You said, as of right now, if you were to project, you think it's closer to that week 1 to week 4 range?
Absolutely. I definitely think so. And I know that if he stays on PUP, he can't practice with the team, and he needs those live reps in the defense. He could do all the rehab he wants to. He needs to be in the defense and reacting to what he's seeing out there. So that's why I think they're going to get him off PUP right before training camp ends, like with roster cut down day, and then work him in doing the practice, maybe miss the first game, and then work in the reps, then limit the snaps going forward. So kind of platooning. And we know they've done that before with Cody Ford, Ty Nsekhe, and some other examples of that. So that's not new for us to expect that they could do that.
Yeah, it's 100% where my head is at. For the last couple of weeks, I've been leaning more into that it's not necessarily Dane Jackson versus Kaiir Elam. It's the fact that those two are going to allow them to ease Trey in. And maybe the first, maybe it is week 1, but maybe week 1, it's 3 drives. Yeah. And they're looking to get him, 12 to 20 snaps just to kind of, hey, let's see how it goes. Let's ease into this. Maybe we try to do some high leverage snaps. We try to get him in there for some red zone, for some big third downs, for some key plays. Then all of a sudden, in week 2, after, like you said, the 11 extra days off and going through that structure, maybe now we're shooting for 60 to 70% of snaps. We're trying to ease in, hey, we're still going to rotate it. All 3 guys play about 2/3 of the game and are moving back and forth. And then you're pushing it into week 3, week 4, week 5, ramping up and getting back to where he is. So you still get a little bit of that, load management and that structure, but not jumping in full go the whole time. So hopefully his progress is at least giving them those options to debate.
Yep. And I'll add 2 extra things with that there. Typically the Bills, they're not going to tell us what's going on, but they're also not going to say one thing and do another too. Like Brandon Beane's pretty forthright with everything he said. And we're getting reports too that Leslie Frazier said that they're excited about this progress. So I want to take them at their word to some extent with that stuff. They're excited about it, and he's moving around well. Let's lean into it a little bit, but not over exaggerate what his abilities are. He's still going to struggle with certain routes and cutting and whatnot, just because he has to react to what he's seeing. And then the other part too is once he hits that 9-month mark, the difference between whether you tear versus whether you don't prior after surgery drops off. Like there's not it can still happen, but it's not like a huge difference. Like if you delay return to sport, by each month, it drops by 51% from what the researchers say. And so if you can delay up until 9 months, then it's kind of negligible where, you still have a chance to re-tear for 2 years afterward, but you're not worried about this guy blowing out his ACL because you rushed it back out there too quickly.
Yeah, that's smart. That's smart. So let's switch gears a little bit here. We now have 2 in a row where I went through the entire emotional cycle as the news breaks of no. And then we get a little bit more information and it's okay. And I'm going through the entire cycle of emotions here. Let's start with Jordan Poyer. We have him going for a ball. I don't know that we ever got video that I saw of whether it got popped from behind or where it came from, but all we knew was that he immediately went to the ground. Initially, the reports were he was holding at his forearm area. Now it pretty quickly came out that it was his elbow. You saw him looking to be in some pretty serious pain. And the way that the trainer was even holding it as they were going off was even a little odd of how it looked. So talk us through what we initially saw. And then I've obviously read your report, maybe why it was maybe the lesser of evils of what we found out since then.
So we know it's an elbow hyperextension based off of Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, all those guys there. So we didn't get any video. We didn't get great descriptors because the descriptors that I had gotten were that it was just a kind of running play, it ended, and then he came out of it holding his elbow. So it sounds like he tried to go out and do a tackle or engage James Cook, and it sounds like his arm just kind of got sandwiched in there, if you will. So he probably was reaching for one thing, got hit from the other way, and that's where the point of contact, or not so much point of contact, but the elbow just got forced the other way there. So that's where the olecranon process gets forced into the bottom of the humerus. Basically your elbow, the actual bony part you feel, gets jammed into the part where it kind of stops and makes your terminal elbow extension. So that got forced past that point there. And there's a little laxity we all have there, but obviously when you have big bodies flying around, it pushes it past that there. And thankfully there wasn't a fracture or a major damage there, but there is still some ligament damage just because that tissue is being stretched. But that pain can be really intense. I mean, just because you're just stressing structures that shouldn't need to be stressed or aren't normally stressed. So that's why he was feeling woozy, kind of unsteady, because it just hits you, that shock of everything. So when they're coming off and they held him into extension, they obviously wanted to make sure he wasn't moving the elbow, but reports were saying that he had his arm in a sling, like a makeshift sling with his shirt, and then the trainer was coming off with his elbow extended. And when I see the trainer coming off and holding the joint in a certain position or moving things around, those could be little clues as to what's going on. And I couldn't find anything that says, hey, when you held the elbow out in full extension like that, that's what's going on there. But the fear was, was there, a fracture? Was there, biceps, triceps tear? So we just needed more information before it went off on that stuff there, though. So thankfully, it was best case scenario in terms of the potential injury, what he could have. But they said he's going to miss a few weeks. It's definitely a lot of pain, swelling, range of motion, working on all that improvement there. It's just unfortunate it happened in training camp, but it's fortunate that happened early in training camp.
Yeah, and that'll lean into this next one we're going to go into. But if you're going to have injuries at a position or a position group, let it be the group that's played the most snaps together in the entire NFL. The Bills secondary has more snaps and time on task together at the same time than any secondary in the NFL. So if you're going to do that, these are the guys who have that continuity and that time on task to be able to snap right back into it. So, Jordan Poyer is a guy that I had mentioned this when the possibility came up of a holdout, that I said, it's not ideal, but if there's anybody that I'm comfortable showing up on Wednesday and starting the game, or showing up on Monday and starting the game Thursday, it's probably Poyer. Like, he knows this defense inside and out. So now we don't even have to worry about that. He's still going to be in the position room every single week. He's going to be there on the sideline talking to the guys. He's going to be in Damar Hamlin's ear every day, helping and coaching him. And, kind of a silver lining, we now get a couple extra weeks of what life would be like without Jordan Poyer, and what it would look like when you have Damar Hamlin playing those snaps, and how it's going to go. So I think there's, some silver lining to this, especially knowing that it shouldn't be a longer term there. And I know you had mentioned that, sometimes they'll do that bracing so it can't overextend. Is that not only protective for him, but what's the likelihood of recurrence here? And is that something they wear to avoid it?
It's pretty low for him to re-injure.
You need that freak incident to happen again.
Exactly. Yeah, you need the mechanism of injury. It's not like he's going to be sitting there extending the arm and suddenly, boom, it goes out again. He could probably stretch it out farther than what he could be, but you need the same mechanism of injury for it to happen again. So there's a chance he could be wearing a brace. We might see in training camp, but he's probably not going to play with a brace once he gets back out there. And there's enough time in between now and the first week of the season that he should be able to go without it there. But even if he does wear it for a week just as a protector, maybe it just doesn't feel right, it's not going to be a lingering thing. So like I said, they're holding it too, just to make sure that, in case there's muscle spasms, in case they're because anybody has an injury, don't touch it, don't move it. You want to make sure you just support it so you can relax and then finally get a true assessment of what's going on.
Yeah, and we're still more than 5 weeks out from the first game. So he's at, I think it's 5 weeks and 3 days from the date of the injury. So still a good, healthy amount of time to get back fully. So unfortunately, the other one that I was sitting there, chanting no, 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 no at my phone was his partner back there, Micah Hyde. So Micah Hyde, that one, the same idea. I don't know that we ever saw a great video or clean, but that one was a little better description. Going up for an interception amongst a crowd, kind of got hit in the air and turned funny, came down real hard right in his, glute hip area all at the same time. Same idea, concerning, lots of pain. Poyer calling out the trainers and the coaches, walking off very slowly and without being able to put weight on his foot, having to get carted off. Those are all the indicators where you're thinking, oh my gosh, is this going to be a season-ending injury? What just happened? So walk us through your initial concern and then fortunately what we've heard since then.
So, those are all great descriptors. You have a great memory, Greg. So, but that was the same thought I was going through. And the one thing that held me up from saying anything sooner was I saw that they're saying that he had difficulty putting weight through his right foot. So he hit on his right hip, glute area. And I was saying he had trouble putting weight on his right foot or right leg. So I thought, okay, well, we don't have video how he hit. Could he have hit with his foot down first? Could he have, hit with the ankle and then hit with his butt, glute area? So that was my concern. I was like, we need more information before we can say definitively what's going on. I mean, he got knocked out of the air. He wasn't able to adjust and kind of land to protect himself. And that's where he had the pain and discomfort. I mean, you fall on some ice in Western New York, you're going to be saying some choice words and not moving around too easily there. So it's basically kind of what happened with Hyde. He did it on grass. So once we knew that he didn't land with his foot and ankle, then I could say, hey, that's probably what it sounds like. And that's what it is. Cause he was right back out there in pads, slowly ramping back up, just more pain and soreness than anything else there.
Okay. All right. Well, that's encouraging. So now we've kind of worked our way through the secondary here. Where we are, all three of those guys are critical to the success of this season. It sounds like we're in decent shape, whether it's absolutely week one. It sounds like week one is very much in play for Poyer and Hyde and still possible for Tre White. Now let's move through. We got a couple of the offensive linemen here. And we even had one of the questions here, Paul asking about it was one of the next guys we had coming up here. This one's a bit more mystery. So I was there the first couple days of camp. Spencer Brown was in uniform. He was in full, helmet, everything there, not a non-contact jersey. So I'm like, all right, this is great. I'm excited. I see him do individual drills, going through stuff. And then when team drills start, he's off to the side. And then day 2, same thing. He's out there doing individual drills, padded up. But when team drills start, he's off to the side. And that wasn't a big deal early on, but now we're getting into our 8th or 9th or 10th day of camp now. What do you know so far with where it is? I know at first it was just he had a little thing done, and then I think we heard procedure. And now we've gotten a little bits of information as we go here. So I know you've gotten some information to help more educatedly speculate. What do we think took place? And maybe why are we seeing this where he's not shut down? He's not non-contact. He's not off to the side with the trainers, but they're not letting him go in team drills yet.
So we got back in, was it right before Memorial Day that he had a procedure done and he was going to miss mandatory minicamp, but he was still out there. He was going to miss some of the OTAs and stuff. They wouldn't say what was going on. And I found, I believe it was late last week, Mark On of the Buffalo News had reported that Spencer Brown had back surgery. So that finally clued us into more what was going on. And I had done research. I've been on Rock Power Report. I've been on Locked On Bills. And I said, hey, we know it's not ankle. We know it's not knee. We know it's not wrist, hand. Because like some of the social media, Instagram, all that stuff, like you can see where there wasn't any bracing, any swelling, any issues with that there. So you kind of narrow it down to shoulder, groin, back. And he did his back injury back in, I think, week 8, 9 last year. So you never want to assume that was causing it, but probably what happened is he probably injured the back, got through the season, did what he needed to, tried rehabbing on his own and trying to feel better and just wasn't quite getting back to where he needed to be at. So then he had the procedure, which I thought was maybe a discectomy. The reason why I think that it was a discectomy is because he's still not fully participating, and those things take between 8 and 12 weeks to kind of get back into full speed with everything. And what a discectomy is basically where they cut a piece out of the intervertebral discs, the discs that lie in between the vertebrae and your lumbar spine that allow you to move around and do all the stuff you need to. So they can change over time due to herniation, or they decrease in water content and kind of compress and cause other problems down the line. You see that the decrease in disc height later on in older individuals, but younger ones, you see more of the disc bulge and disc herniation. So what was happening was part of the disc was probably pushing out on one of the nerves going down his leg. You hear that term sciatica. We also call it radiculopathy in the therapy world. So it goes down, that pain down the leg, causes burning, numbness, tingling. Just, it's not fun to deal with there. So it wasn't getting better by conventional means. And they went in and basically just cleaned out that area and just made sure that the area was scarring down properly. And they don't want to ramp activity up too quickly because there is a chance for reherniation if you jump back up in too quickly. So if we speculate that he has injury, or not injury, but the surgery sometime in mid-May, late May, then if you're looking at 12 weeks, that puts him about mid-August, which isn't great for that cohesiveness of the offensive line. But the offensive line is in shambles in terms of cohesiveness anyway. So this could be a blessing in disguise for Brown as he gets back, but they want to make sure that he's not going to have any of those recurring symptoms that led him to get the surgery in the first place before they get back out there in full contact.
So, it's certainly, I'm not an expert on radiculopathy, but being able to see the potential timeline that they're going through, obviously I'm going to take it as a positive sign that they have him out there in pads, in uniform, doing those things. They're simply being disciplined and regimented to their time frame, that their time frame doesn't have the full contact impact to go to, and that hopefully that's that last graduation and that last element to be able to go into. So you don't think it's crazy to think that maybe another week or two here, if we get into that second week of August, that would make sense as a timeline of when we might see more full contact engagement from him?
Agreed. I definitely think that he should start ramping back up. And then obviously the hope is he's not having symptoms or any problems with that there. But I want to say other teams will get him out there sooner, but maybe in the regular season, if he has to go undergo that, maybe they rush him back quicker. But if they have the time to not push him back out there, they might as well maximize that time as much as they can to make sure there's no problems down the line.
Yeah, and I'm really torn because the same thing in the secondary where I talked about, hey, there's kind of a silver lining of letting, DeMar Hamlin get some extra reps or Jaquan Johnson get some extra reps. I don't mind that on the offensive line. Hey, I kind of want to see what David Questenberry can do. I want to see did Tommy Doyle improve. I want to see, these different combinations of people moving around. But I also want to see the first five guys get some reps together. So at some point here, we got to click over there and start to get those reps together. And one other person who's stopping that from happening, first day of camp, we get in there. Nobody knows anything about this. Sean McDermott gets up to the mic and said, yep, Rodger Saffold got in a car accident and has a rib injury. So again, pretty concerning right off that, we didn't know fracture. We didn't know, was it a strain? Was it having, what the specific rib injury was, how severe? That's something that especially in the trenches of the offensive line and the amount of hard strikes and punches and things like that going in there, that was, I remember that from my days. That set off some red flags for me. Like, oh God, that sounds horrible. I will say the most recent videos of him, I even, tell me if I'm crazy, I was even connecting dots that, when he's on the bike, he's actually doing the pumping with the arms pretty hard. And like, I feel my ribs moving when I'm doing that. So, and I saw the explosive drills he was doing here the other day. So I'm telling myself that it's looking better. What are you thinking? And am I crazy?
You're not crazy. You're not crazy. There's other things you're crazy about, but you're not crazy about this. So
that's not the reason. That's not the reason I'm crazy.
Those are good observations. He's getting more upper arm working, and we saw him doing like a shuttle drill in practice yesterday. So he's just ramping back up. Now, the ribs probably aren't fully healed, when you're looking at it from a microscopic standpoint, but they're healed up enough where he could probably do most, if not all, his activities pain-free. And he's just kind of ramp himself back up to activity because he's not going to jump right into, full pads and do everything. So they want to make sure he's set conditional or from a conditioning standpoint, so he can get back up and then just jump right back into it. Like he never missed any time, but they don't want to say, it's healed up enough. Let's put some padding on there and get back out there. You were doing that during the regular season, but right now, give yourself the time to heal up so it's not lingering or just having residual pain there. So I'm expecting him to be back in early mid-August because once again, going through, I feel like a stalker sometimes going through Instagram and Twitter, but like guys post stuff up there and sometimes you find clues about that stuff. And so we saw pictures, at least from mid-July, of him working out. I don't know if it was that day he was working out, but you figure out from, okay, if that picture is taken mid-July, training camp started, or at least they announced it July 23rd, 24th, it happened within that 2-week time frame, then you can kind of set a timeline based off of that, just based off of what they're doing. So they take about 4 or 6 weeks to heal. And once again, he'd probably play through that, maybe miss a game during the season, but hey, take the time to get right before you have to really gut through that stuff.
Okay. All right. So you're calming my anxiety so far this show. So good work there. I'm happy that we're making our way through here. One more specific injury before we get into this bucket of general soreness that we've seen so much. This one just recently, Marquez Stevenson catching a longer touchdown going through and all of a sudden pulling up and pulling up lane with his right foot, and then immediately taking the shoe off and having to hobble over. It's really tough to put things together there, but what are you piecing together from what we've heard?
We need more information on that one. I if we had video, I could say, hey, let's do something about that. The concern is he did suffer a right foot injury during the Bears game in the preseason last year, and that sent him to injured reserve, which he played in the next game against the Packers. So let's keep that in mind. He was able to play through the injury, and then they put him on injured reserve. I believe that was a way to get him through to the roster without having exposed him to, cutting him down or cutting other guys there. So the time spent on injured reserve last year wasn't indicative of the severity of the injury from what I felt it was there. So it was just a matter of, hey, we're not in a rush to get this guy out here. We're not going to cut somebody, bring this guy back who's unproven. But it is concerning that, hey, he had midfoot sprain last year. He injured the same foot, but we need more information if it's the same type of injury, if it's a different area in the foot, if it's even the ankle. Like, we don't know enough about it there. But I think it's worth noting previous injuries and then how it does affect other injuries later on, or at least the chances of that. And then he does have a pretty checkered injury history, including, I believe, a torn ACL, and then he has some other stuff going on in there. So like he's been banged up throughout his collegiate career.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Brandon Beane's going to stash him on the IR for the whole year anyway. So this is just a good, easy excuse rather than having to make up an injury. Now we just get to stash him early. Like, oh, sorry, Marcus. Keep working out. Hang out in the receiver room. We'll see you next year.
Well, keep in mind, if they put him on IR now, he stays on IR all season. If they put IR after,
back. He was the one they did the shenanigans with last year with Reed Ferguson and pulling people on and off. So we'll see where that goes this year. There'll be somebody else that they'll do some shenanigans with. And it's possible Tre is that guy. I'm hoping he's not. So let's go into now. This will be kind of a two-topic discussion. First, I want to go through some of the names, but then I also am hoping you can kind of explain for the fans, why do we see the team throw around this term general soreness, and why do we see them use those veteran rest days as we go? So let's start with some of the names and the players that are out there that we've seen attached to this. And you could just either kind of, hey, nothing to see here, more veteran rest, and this is the kind of soreness that happens, or is there enough absence that maybe it's raising a flag for you with some of the names we have? And then you can maybe explain to us a little bit about what that might mean. So let's start with our man Ryan Bates. He was just on the show. If anybody hasn't checked it out yet, he did an awesome job on the film room with our guys Eric, Kendall, and Anthony. Any thoughts? That one's lingered a little bit longer than I would like, but I'm not terribly concerned yet.
We don't have a ton of information on him. They've called it general soreness. He doesn't have a lengthy injury history. I think there's something more going on than what they're saying with soreness, but give me a body part and then I can kind of dig into it. But until then, we just have to kind of wait and see.
Okay. Jamison Crowder, we've seen back the last 2 days. So that one, I think he missed like 4 in a row, 5 in a row, but now is back the last 2.
He's concerning because he is the poster child for, I hate the term injury prone, but he's had a lot of injuries, the lower extremity. I think every main muscle group in the lower half of your body, your groin, your quads, your calf, hamstrings, he's had injuries to, like, multiple times over. And I believe that was partially due to his usage in New York and Washington. But when you see it soreness, especially with a guy that has had so many instances of that, it's like, oh, here we go again. So he's a veteran. He knows how to handle himself and get ready. But it's like, what are you doing that you can't get over this stuff? Is it like, you've been in the league long enough, you should be able to figure this out by now? And I'm not saying he hasn't, but sometimes things can and do happen. But just, it's concerning when you see a guy like that with that type of injury history already on the sidelines because of soreness or just whatever strain or whatever.
How about the polar opposite of that? A player who hasn't missed a game in like 6 seasons, Daquan Jones.
He sounds more like veteran rest, and we're going to get into that. I found some great information on that. So he's an older player, and those we're both older guys. We don't recover, whether it's drinking or working out or whatever. You don't recover as quick as you used to as
None
your
of the
20s.
things.
Like you look back and say, man, those are the days. So we're going to get more in that, but Quan Jones is an example of that.
All right, and Jake Kumaro as well.
Same thing. He's one of the older players. He hasn't had a ton of tread. He has treaded on tires, but he hasn't have a lot of mileage. I guess using two weird whatevers. I
like the analogy. It worked.
Yeah, analogies. Thank you. I could not think of that. So the different analogies, but like still, he's getting to be older, and if he's feeling anything, and he's more of a roster lock than some of the other people that we see on the list and whatnot. So hey, if he needs a few days to get him right, rather than trying to push him out there and then you lose him for a significant amount of time.
Yeah, so we'll see where that goes. And now, overall, I thought this was an interesting one that you had brought up as we were prepping for the show, and being able to look at the Bills' approach to injury risk management. And that I don't know if it's accurate or not, but I've seen it thrown out there a lot that the Bills err more on the side of being conservative, that they use veteran rest days more than other teams. So one, I don't know if you know that's true comparatively to other teams or not to confirm that, but even if it is, can you explain a little bit about why they go about doing that?
So I don't know whether they are more. Well, I actually did an article on my site about that, more conservative, but there was more relation to use of the questionable designation. So there might be some play into that, but some teams are more aggressive. We see the Buccaneers, Jets are more aggressive with, if their guy's questionable, they're more likely to play than some other teams who they designate as questionable. So as for the use of veteran rest days, I do pay attention to that stuff, but I've never kind of quantified to see whether more teams use the veteran rest days or not there, but I know it's been out there as the research has gotten better with that.
Anecdotally, the only thing I can share is each week when Aaron and I would do our preview show, we would always go over the injury report from the other team. And I can tell you, I'm going to go out on a limb and say every team, the Bills had either more or were the only team using veteran rest days as the designation on the injury report. Now, that doesn't mean somebody else doesn't say, what was Tom Brady? Tom Brady was on the injury report for shoulder every single week for
times,
literally like 15 years. So some teams may have been doing, hey, we're doing veteran rest day because Tommy has a knee and that's how we rest it. And that we're saying knee, even though it's veteran rest. And the Bills say veteran rest, even though they know it's Jamison Crowder's lower body extremity soft tissue management. They don't put calf or hamstring, they put veteran rest. So maybe there's a little gray area there, but I will say that was consistent all season long. The Bills used that term more than any other team.
And, and going off of, what you're saying about the injury reports, I pulled one up from 2017, 2018. We have it pulled up if you want to bring it to. So this is 2017 in late December. Let me try to pull my screen up here myself. So this was December 6th, 7th, 8th in 2017. I can't remember who the heck they were playing, but you can see all the injuries. I mean, this was a bad week here. And every one of these guys has some type of injury designation to an actual like body part there. So whether they were using veteran rest days or whatever else, that's kind of how they're managing it there. Yeah. So if we go to the next one, there we go. So obviously a lot cleaner. This is from sometime mid in the season. This is a bit about October because Derek Anderson was out forever with his concussion. But you see Lorenzo Alexander and Kyle Williams are both rest, the designated rest. And, they use that for a while there. So it's just interesting how they designate it. And I highlight that because in 2017, McDermott came in, he coached, he got them in playoffs, and then he kind of cleaned house with how they did everything. And that's when they started bringing in the new training facility, everything else like that. They're kind of started turning everything over. And I know they were talking about that during the 2017 season because McDermott came in 2017. Eric Wood was still there because he's talked about that in his podcast. So they were kind of giving wish lists like, what would you want in here? And they were kind of, bringing up everything you can. You can bring that down so people can see everything more. So they were getting this wish list, and then 2018 or 2017, they brought in this sports scientist. Her name is Joe Clubb. She's from, I believe, Australia, and they brought in some other sports scientists, and they've kind of revamped how they did everything. So I believe one of the things was let's try to get some of those veteran rest days in there. And there's a ton of information out there regarding how they manage workload ratios and just understanding how to better get guys better rested and try not to exert them too much there. So we see with weekend warriors where you get the weekend warrior injury where you're doing nothing during the week and then you try to go out, play a pickup basketball game, football, and then you get that injury and you just kind of lingering and just never really get better there. So that's where sudden spikes in training or sudden activities your body's not adjusted to there. So years ago the teams used to just get the guys thrown out there and say, get out there and just do what you got to do. And they've taken more of a scientific approach to this stuff and say, hey, we might not want to spike the training load so quickly and then bring these guys back down to doing nothing. We want to try to keep them an even keel, if you will. And that's the acute on chronic workload ratio. So I'm going to try to keep this simple because if I start trying to get in the weeds of it, I'm going to make myself confused. I'm going to get everybody else confused and no one's going to be happy. So really what this is they look to try to identify how to incorporate different workloads, whether that's sprinting, lifting, whatever. They're looking at external factors and try to identify, okay, here's the things we want to do. How do you respond? Those are internal factors there. So I think they use different terminology, but it's the same concept there. So look to say, okay, how do you respond to doing these activities, by actually doing them and seeing how many reps you can do, how fast you can go, and then how does your body respond? What's your fatigue level, your heart rate, everything else that goes into that. And they wear those GPS systems that look like sports bras. I believe a lot of teams wear those there. So they're able to track a lot of that stuff and they're able to kind of see the level of exertion. They're able to see how much effort you're putting into that. And of course they're asking guys, how you feeling and whatnot. So they're able to gather all this data and kind of identify units of not movement, but units of activity. And they kind of extrapolate out to, we're going to use a running analogy. So let's say you're doing 10 miles a week of running and then you want to increase it. Let's say you go to 15 and then you go to 20 there. You want to increase your workload, but you don't want to increase it too much or not enough because you want to see an improvement in your overall activity. And what the acute on chronic workload ratio, when it breaks down to, is you want to take, let's say, a 3 to 4 week average of those activities or the mileage you're doing. You add it up and then you divide it by the number of weeks you do, usually 2 or 3 or 4. And then you divide it against the most recent workload that you did. So like that week 3 or 4, and then that's where you get your ratio. So they find the sweet spot. According to Joe, her sweet spot is 0.8 to 1.2, but I've seen the literature anywhere from 0.8 to 1.5. So if you are underdosing people in terms of their level of activity, you can increase their injury risk. If you overdo it, you can increase their injury risk. So they want to keep them in that same level of where they say, hey, you're having some level of exertion, we can bump you up as we need to, but we don't want to go over this threshold because then we start get into that range where you're having injuries or you're just asking too much of your body there. So we see when she came in and their whole approach to things, we saw a lot of stuff change and they've become one of the best healthier teams in the league comparative to some other teams there. So I hope I gave that justice because she does fantastic work, but they definitely have a science behind it and there's reason behind why they're doing this event and rest days. And they probably find that the older guys require more time to recover and they're not losing anything by their workloads, by still active recoveries and massages, weightlifting, what have you, but they're not exerting themselves constantly.
Yeah, my doctor told me he wanted me to get working out, but to start very gradually. So I started by like driving by stores that sold sweatpants, and like that was like me easing into it, like real gradual, careful. So as we kind of go through the final stages here of wrapping things up, I hear this comment a lot and I tell myself that it's true. And Tommy's saying here, top training staff in the league. And that I have seen statistics that explain the Bills have had fewer injuries than other teams in the league. And that year to year, there's a lot of luck baked in there. That's, you can't stop ACLs from tearing. You can't stop bones from breaking. That's just not how it works. But I will say, the idea to be able to go in and now year after year after year after year that they're constantly in this top range of fewest starter games lost to injury, fewest games lost to injury, at some point, I have to think that there's just something they're doing better than other staff. So, obviously I know a chunk of that is still there. Is that, hey, 70% good luck, or are they really doing things that maybe other teams aren't as cutting edge or aren't utilizing, like you said, bringing in people like Joe, managing that and giving themselves higher probability? Do you think that they're actually making a bigger impact than people want to give them credit for?
It's hard to say. I mean, there is a lot of luck with that. You can't stop the concussion. You can't stop the ACL tear. You can't stop some of the freak things that happen. And like, even in that research, they noted that you can't stop some of that stuff. Like, that's going to happen. It's like, all right, whatever. But one thing I want to highlight is that we might get the soft tissue injuries, but we're not seeing a reoccurrence of them later on. So I'll use a perfect example. Matt Milano, he seems to have a hamstring strain every year. He misses about one game, I think sometimes maybe two. He doesn't have that problem again later on in the season. So he's not dealing with it later on as we go, throughout the season. He's not what Jamison Crowder has to deal with, where he's on off the injury report because of the hamstring. Like, once they're on, they deal with it, and then usually don't see it being a problem again there. So I think that's where the management is. You can't necessarily stop every injury from happening, but you're not having that injury linger like you do for the other ones there. And then if they need to play through that injury because it's the playoffs, they can better manage it and say, hey, let's get you out there and do what you have to do there. So say whether they're better or not. I know the one strength and conditioning coach won an award for best one, but like, somebody's going to win every year.
Sure.
And then just how they approach things, I think they're just being more mindful of that. And I remember Eric Wood, I listened to his podcast. If you don't listen to it, it's great, but he's talked about how the resources they had when he started out with, I think, the plastic dividers and just the resources weren't very good when he started out there, and where they've gone before. And I even asked Thurman Thomas this too. I said, would your career have been different had you had the resources? And I believe he said yes, but he said that he didn't have the resources anywhere close to what they have now. So like, just the science has definitely come in more of the recovery process, and it used to be kind of just gut it out and get what you need to. But now it's, hey, let's throw everything we can at this to find that edge. And so far the Bills have found the edge.
So, obviously anybody who hasn't had a chance to see Kyle's work before, you guys can see how smart he is, how detailed he is, and where that, Dr. Physical Therapy comes into play, being able to apply all the information to things that we see. So make sure you're checking out Kyle at Banged Up Bills. Make sure you're checking out bangedupbills.com. You can hear him, I think, every week. He's normally on with Joe Marino on Locked On Bills. We'll have him here across the Cover One network as we go through the season as well. So a lot of different opportunities here. Kyle, before we get you out of here, anything else you want to tell the fans, or anything else that they can expect from your work?
The only person we didn't hit on that just briefly was Ike Boettger. I think he's going to go to pop through that season because of the number of offensive linemen we have on. He can be a guy that they can sneak over. He could play week one, and we've seen the Achilles repairs get better, but there's not a need to rush him back out there, and he's not going to be 100% even if he does get out week one. So slide him over, save a roster spot. So like, that's the only one I'm expecting to go over to pop from, where we're at right now. So I just want to highlight that because it's another big injury.
I think I saw one in the chat. How about Tommy Doyle?
I have no idea what's going on with him.
Okay.
He went down and he went right back in there. But he's been flashing, which has been really nice to see. Like, he was a guy that was like, I don't know, he's a big guy, but he's starting to really kind of come into his own this season, which is awesome. So anytime you see him go down is concerning. But I got a ton of stuff coming up at Banged Up Bills. I'm working on a lot of stuff in the background as it comes out. I'll let you guys know, obviously. Awesome. Still continue to do work at Buffalo Rumblings. I just published an article about Tre White's return, I thought, week 2. I was working for a sports betting website, but that relationship ended because they wanted to move more internally. So if anybody's looking for, injury betting, other freelance stuff, hey, give me a call. I like doing the betting stuff. I thought there was a lot of valuable information in that. And I did pretty well from a betting standpoint last year. Awesome. So trying to think where else I did. Locked On Bills. I'm also with you guys here. I do a lot of draft coverage with you guys in the off season. I just try to get out there and I just try to say yes to many opportunities because, hey, you never know where it comes from or what it can lead to. And I love talking about this stuff. I could go another hour and a half if you want me to, but I know our listeners only have so much time. So any questions, I'm willing to talk about it. And I get hip in the DMs a lot about stuff. And I just want to give people a honest and realistic approach or an assessment of what's going on. I'm not going to be right all the time, but if I could at least give some level of expertise to what I'm seeing that might help give some context to the situation that we didn't have before.
That's awesome. It's sure that's exactly how I view it. It's just someone with the knowledge of subject matter expertise that you have. It really brings a lot to these discussions. And I'm being told that one of our correspondents actually has adjusted their season win total review based on your feedback and has some input here. So let me go to our on-site correspondent.
Buffalo Bills going undefeated, and we're going to the Super Bowl. Yeah, that's.
So it's good to know. It's good to know that he feels we're not going undefeated and going to the Super Bowl. So excited to see that. So thank you very much, Kyle. This has been awesome tonight. Really appreciate it. You're always awesome to have on, and hopefully we'll, of course, have you on here as the season goes.
Thank you, Greg. Always enjoy talking with you, and go Bills.
Awesome. Thank you very, very much. All right, guys. So always great to have Kyle on here. It's a ton of fun. So make sure you're checking it out. We're going to be here for you all season long, going through everything that we're doing. We're going to be able to bring in different guests as the week goes. Next week, going to have our man Joe Marino on with us here, talking about what he's seen so far in training camp. So a lot of good things going on. We're really excited to be able to continue on. Make sure you're checking out our Cover One Pass program. If you want to be able to support the show, you want to be able to check out what's going on. It's in the description. That's the easiest way to support us. You get access to our Cover One Slack channel, which is awesome. You get to chat back and forth with awesome informed Bills fans. You get access to us, ask questions all the times. I went through my Salary Cap 101 program that's only available to One Pass members. Eric did an entire glossary of all the different football terms you hear thrown around. What does that mean? What is a green dog blitz? What does it mean when they're running these kind of routes? All those different things, explaining each of those. You have all of our premium writing content. We have 4 new writers on staff doing an awesome job bringing you all kinds of stuff. That is easily the best way to support us. If you want us to continue giving you all the awesome insight and information and great shows that we do, a lot of that comes from us being able to invest the time and energy and money in the subscriptions and the different information that we get access to be able to bring you better shows. So we're really excited about what we're building for this season. There's some new shows coming up here that we're going to be bringing from a fantasy standpoint, more NFL wide shows, doing recaps and league wide reviews for post-game shows, all kinds of different things. So make sure you're checking it out. All the shows across the network. Give us a like, give us a rating, give us a review. It really, really means a lot to support us. So without further ado, I know Aaron wasn't here for us this week, but Kyle was fantastic. We'll be on with Joe again next week, and then Aaron will be back from vacation afterwards. So looking forward to everything else like that. On behalf of Kyle Trimble, my name is Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.